The rain fell like silver needles on the broken steel streets of Outpost 9, a forgotten settlement at the edge of human space. It was the kind of place where ships came to die and souls came to disappear. Rust clung to every wall, and the air tasted like metal and regret. The only warmth came from the neon signs humming faintly in the distance, promising food and safety that didn't exist. Darren walked the streets with his coat wrapped tight. His boots sloshed through deep puddles, his breath a mist in the cold. He wasn't looking for anyone. He just wanted to clear his mind. Today marked 3 years since he left Earth behind, 3 years since the accident, since the grief. But something made him stop at the edge of a trash heap behind an old scrapyard. He saw it, a small movement. Not the skitter of rats or scrap droids. It was slower, more deliberate. He stepped closer and heard a sound soft shivering breaths. Beneath a sheet of torn tarp, something huddled, barely moving. Darren knelt and lifted a corner. What he saw didn't make sense. A child. Alien, clearly, her skin a pale violet blue, like frozen dawn, with faint bioluminescent lines running along her neck and cheeks. Her eyes were too large for her face, glowing a soft amber even in the dim light. But it was the way she curled into herself, arms tightly around her knees, like she had shrunk herself down to escape the universe, that pierced through Darren's numb heart. She didn't flinch when he moved the tarp. She didn't beg or speak, just stared, silent. Drenched. He offered his hand. She didn't take it. "Are you alone?" he asked softly. A pause. Then, barely above a whisper, she nodded once. Darren looked around. The alley was empty, except for broken machines and rusting debris. There was no one else. And in that moment, something deeper stirred inside him, not pity, not duty, but a memory of a child he couldn't save, of arms that never held their own again. He took off his coat and wrapped it around the girl. "Let's get you somewhere." "Dry," he said. She didn't answer, but she let him lift her. His small quarters were barely more than a converted freight pod, but it was warm and safe. He gave her clean clothes, his smallest ones, still too large, and heated soup from a can. She sat on the floor, legs tucked close, watching him with those wide, unreadable eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. Silence. "I'm Darren." "You?" "Can stay here tonight. No one will bother you." More silence. Then, just before he turned to leave her with a blanket, she spoke. "Sira." He turned back. "Sira?" She nodded once, then looked down again. Something in that name trembled in the air, like a string pulled tight. He didn't know why, but it settled deep in his bones. She didn't speak again that night. But when Darren woke the next morning, she was still there, sitting at the edge of his bed, her gaze fixed on him like she was studying a ghost. Over the next few days, Sira didn't say much, but she stayed. And Darren began to notice strange things. The old fusion core in his home, which had flickered and sputtered for months, now ran smooth and steady. His broken data terminal blinked to life without repair. And once, he found Sira standing beside it, her fingertips glowing faintly. He never asked. Maybe he was afraid of the answer, but others noticed too. The trader from 2 blocks down knocked one morning, eyes wide. "That girl with you, she's not from around here, is she?" he asked. "Those markings, they look royal." Darren frowned. "She's just a kid. Leave her alone." But he couldn't unhear the word, royal. He watched her closely that night. Her gaze seemed older than her small body. Wise, quiet, full of something waiting to rise. Was she just a runaway orphan, or something more? Something told Darren that this girl, this quiet alien child he'd pulled from the gutter, would bring light or ruin to worlds beyond his own. And deep down, he knew whatever her secret was, it had already chosen him. The following days passed like a quiet dream. The outpost buzzed as usual with broken droids, tired faces, and trade deals sealed with half-truths. But inside Darren's small metal shelter, time moved differently. Sira had begun speaking more, not much, just short sentences, questions mostly, about things no normal child would ask. Why are humans not connected to their machines? Why does metal on this planet rust? Why do you not command? Her voice was always soft, but the way she asked made Darren pause. She spoke like someone who had once lived inside power, not beside it. And though she still looked like a child, bare feet, oversized sweater, thin arms, her presence filled the space like a quiet storm. One evening, as a red dust storm blew across the outpost, Darren found her standing beside the cum tower on the roof. She had climbed there alone, hair tangled by the wind, eyes fixed on the sky. "You shouldn't be up here," he said, stepping beside her. "I was listening," she said simply. "To what?" "The wires. They hum, but the hum is wrong, broken." Darren followed her gaze. Above them, stars blinked through dusty skies. The broken tower crackled faintly, long dead to any signal. "It hasn't worked in years," he muttered. "No one out there listening anyway." Sira tilted her head. "But I heard something." "Like what?" She turned to him. "Like a voice that forgot its name, and it said my name back." A chill passed through him. He wanted to laugh it off. Maybe she was just imagining. Or maybe the trauma had left its mark in ways he didn't understand. But something about her face made him believe. That night, when Darren slept, he dreamt of a palace made of crystal and stars, and a young girl standing alone in a hall of thrones. Her eyes were the same as Sira's, filled with silence. Filled with purpose. When he woke, Sira was gone. Panic surged through him. He tore open the door and ran barefoot into the icy dawn. He checked every alley, every corner of the scrapyard where he first found her. Nothing. But just as the sun began to rise, casting pale gold across the broken city, he saw her. Standing in front of the old archive building, doors wide open. "Sira." He called. She didn't turn. He reached her, breathless. "Don't run off like that." "I had to come," she said. "This place remembers me." Darren frowned. "What are you talking about?" She walked inside. Dust covered the archive shelves, datapads scattered and broken. It had been abandoned since the war. Nothing worked. Or so he thought, until Sira placed her hand on the central console. A flash of light sparked from her palm. Then, one by one, ancient screens came to life. Old recordings flickered across the walls, alien symbols, star charts, holograms of forgotten worlds. Darren watched, stunned, as the archive lit up like it had waited just for her. "This isn't possible," he whispered. Ira turned to him, her face calm. "This place remembers my blood. My people built this long before humans came." He stared at her, words stuck in his throat. "What do you mean?" She looked at the glowing sigils floating around her and said quietly, "I am not just Sira. I was born of the royal line of Alion Kai, and they are still searching for me." Darren felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "Then why were you in the alley?" he asked. "Why here? Why me?" She stepped closer. "Because someone betrayed. U.S. They tried to erase me, hide me from the stars. But something in the hum of this world called me to you. And when I saw you, I knew you were the only one who wouldn't sell me or run." Darren stared at her. The girl he had fed soup to, covered in a blanket, curled up in a corner. Now standing in the center of a glowing archive with galaxies reflected in her eyes. He didn't know what scared him more, what she had said, or how much of him already believed it. Before he could speak, the screens around them shifted. A symbol blinked red. "They found me," Sira whispered. "And they're coming." Darren slammed the archive doors shut, locking the ancient bolt with trembling hands. The metal clicked into place, but he knew it wouldn't stop whatever was out there. He turned to Sira, her face still calm despite the red glow on the walls. Her eyes had gone distant, like she was listening again, not with ears, but with something deeper. "Who's coming?" he asked, voice low. "The hunters," she whispered. "The ones who destroyed my house. The ones who wear light like armor. They followed the echo of my bloodline. Are they human?" She shook her head. "They fear humans. They call you Chaos-born. They think your hearts are too loud." Darren stared at her. Too loud? What did that even mean? Before he could ask more, a tremor ran through the archive floor, soft at first, then heavier. Like distant footsteps coming closer. The old building groaned. Dust fell from the beams. "We have to move," Darren said, grabbing her hand. "Wait," Sira said, pulling back. "There's something here I need to take." She ran to the console, placing both hands flat on the surface. Lights rippled beneath her fingers. The archive responded like it had a mind of its own. A small panel hissed. Open beside her, and inside lay a single crystal dark blue, shaped like a teardrop, pulsing with slow light. "What is it?" Darren asked. "A memory stone," she said. "It holds proof. My lineage, my right, and the truth they're trying to erase." Before he could react, a high-pitched noise sliced through the silence like metal screaming. Then came the footsteps. Real now, heavy, purposeful. Someone or something was outside. They ducked low and crept to a narrow side door. Darren motioned for silence. Sira followed closely, clutching the crystal to her chest dot as they slipped out the side. Darren caught a glimpse of the figure entering through the main hall. Tall, cloaked in gray metal. A faceless helmet, glowing eyes, and a weapon shaped like a staff and blade combined. It turned slightly, scanning the room with slow, precise motion. They didn't look like soldiers. They looked like exterminators. Darren pulled Sira down an alley, breath fogging in the cold air. They ran past old market stalls, crashed skiffs, and power lines drooping like vines. The sky above flickered lightning without clouds. They reached his shelter, and Darren slammed the door shut behind them, bolting it twice. He pulled a curtain aside to peek out. Nothing followed yet. "Just shadows. You weren't joking," he said. "Those things, they're real. They won't stop," she said. "They believe I'm a threat. My voice can unlock things. They fear. They think if I awaken, others might too." "Others?" Darren asked. Sira nodded slowly. "There were more like me, scattered, silenced, but some survived, maybe hidden, maybe sleeping." He sat down hard, running both hands through his hair. "What do you want me to do, Sira?" "I fix broken water pumps. I scavenge parts. I'm not built for this." She sat beside him, quietly, then placed the memory stone in his hands. It felt warm. "Alive somehow. They chose wrong," she said softly. "They thought hiding me among the broken would keep me from rising. But the broken see things others miss. And your heart is loud. That's why I heard it." He looked at her, really looked. The small girl who barely spoke, who listened to wires and made machines obey with a touch. And now, carrying a secret that could shake stars. "What if I get you off-world?" he said suddenly. "Smugglers pass through all the time. If we can find someone with a clean ship, we might outrun them." Sira hesitated. "Maybe, but we'll need more than speed. We'll need trust." As she said it, another tremor hit. Louder this time. Closer. The shelter wall shook from outside. A voice boomed not through the air, but inside their heads. Deep. Inhuman. "You are protecting a violation of balance. Surrender the Echo Child and your extinction will be brief." Darren froze. Sira stood slowly, face pale. "They've sent a speaker." It means they're ready to burn everything down. And in that moment, Darren felt something strange rise in him. Not fear, not anger. Something old. Something human. He looked at Sira. Then let's make them regret it. The ground outside groaned as if the sky itself were pressing down on the outpost. A strange fog rolled in, gray and sharp-smelling, like electricity and scorched metal. The streets emptied. Traders vanished. Even the drunkards in the alleys went silent. They all knew something terrible had come, something that did not belong in their world. Inside the shelter, Darren stood with his fists clenched, staring at the bolted door. Sira remained still beside him, both hands wrapped around the glowing memory stone. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wide, listening, measuring, remembering. How do we fight something like that? Darren asked, his voice low, as if afraid the walls might listen. They speak into our heads. Sira didn't answer at first. She just walked over to the power unit, touched it gently, and the lights flickered into full brightness. Machines that had been dead for years hummed softly. Not all battles are about power, she said. Some are about who refuses to kneel. Darren looked at her. She didn't sound like a child anymore. She sounded like someone who had carried entire galaxies in silence. Then the knock came. Soft, polite. 3 taps. Darren raised a wrench like a weapon. Another knock. Then a voice, different from the speaker they'd heard in their minds. This one was human. Open up. We know she's in there. Darren hesitated, looked at Sira. They've sent someone like you, she said. But he's not like you inside. With a breath, Darren unlocked the door, but only partially. It creaked open a sliver, revealing a man in a worn-out uniform. His face was tired, scarred, his eyes hidden behind a visor. Beside him stood 2 silent armored beings, the same hunters as before. You Darren Cole? The man asked. Darren gave a slow nod. You've got something that doesn't belong to your kind. She doesn't belong to you either, Darren said, gripping the wrench tighter. The man didn't blink. They want her because she's a risk. She remembers things that were meant to be erased. You keep her, and you invite fire on everyone here. Sira stepped into view behind Darren. The man's eyes twitched. Even behind the visor, Darren saw it. You're one of them, he muttered. I am one of myself, she answered. And you are wearing a borrowed voice. The man raised his hand, but one of the hunters placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered something in a language Darren couldn't understand. It sounded like metal scraping over bone. Then the man looked at Darren again. You've been warned. When the speaker returns, it won't knock. They left. The fog deepened. Sira turned to Darren. They'll destroy the whole outpost if they must. They don't care who burns. Darren sat down, trying to breathe. The weight of it all hit him. This wasn't about him saving a girl. This was about standing between a forgotten princess and those who'd rather end history than face it. We can't run anymore. Can we? He asked. Sira shook her head. They will follow, no matter where. Unless what? She hesitated. Unless I speak. Unless I awaken the old network. What network? A lattice hidden in human space. Long before your kind spread to the stars, my ancestors seeded points of memory and power. Nodes meant to awaken if ever one of us was in danger. Darren blinked. Are you saying it's here? Not far, buried beneath this world. But I cannot reach it alone. Darren stared at her, then stood. Then we find it. There's risk, she said. So, he replied. I lost my family years ago. All I have left is the choice to stand for something. Sira looked at him with strange warmth in her glowing eyes. You are the reason I was drawn here. Not by accident, by pattern. They packed quickly. Darren loaded supplies into his old crawler, a beat-up hover vehicle barely held together by hope. Sira sat in the back, her hand on the memory stone. Outside, the fog thickened. Shadows moved without sound. Before they left, Darren looked back at the shelter, his old life, his quiet grief. Everything broken and small. Then he looked at Sira. This wasn't a rescue anymore. This was a stand. And sometimes, even the smallest. Human heart could become a battlefield no empire expected. Ending line. He crawler buzzed low across the ruins, its engines whining in protest as Darren guided it beyond the edge of Outpost 9. Most avoided this place. Even scavengers didn't come here anymore. The land was dry and cracked, full of old stone spires and half-buried machines. Legends called it the fracture, a scar left from a forgotten war, but Sira knew where to go. She sat beside him, one hand resting gently on the memory stone, the other tracing strange patterns in the air. Glowing symbols flickered above her fingers, vanishing as quickly as they formed. She wasn't speaking, but she was listening with her blood, with something ancient that pulsed inside her like starlight. How do you know it's here? Darren asked as the crawler slowed near a collapsed tunnel. The hum, she replied. It changed when we got closer. Deeper, older. Darren stepped out first, his boots sinking into the dry dust. Wind moaned through the stone, whispering like ghosts. He helped Sira down, and together they walked into the ruin. The tunnel's entrance was almost invisible, covered in sand and metal vines. As they entered, the world above faded behind them. Only silence remained, thick, pressing silence. They walked for what felt like hours. Then Sira stopped. It's here, she whispered. They stood before a large circular wall. Smooth, black, untouched by time, no doors, no marks. Just stone. Darren looked at her. You're sure? Sira placed her hand against it. The stone lit up. Lines of light spread outward in a perfect spiral. Symbols appeared, floating in the air, beautiful and alien. The ground rumbled softly, and then, with a deep sigh, the wall opened. Beyond it was a chamber unlike anything Darren had ever seen. Massive, glowing, silent. A pool of liquid light floated in the center, suspended above the ground. Around it, metal pillars rose like trees, humming softly with power. Strange shapes hovered in the air, recordings of ancient events frozen in time. Sira stepped forward and knelt beside the pool. This is the lattice, she said. This is what they wanted buried. What does it do? Darren asked. It remembers. Not just data, but feeling, truth, pain, choices. It binds the past to the present, and it can wake others like me. Darren felt cold. Won't they sense it too? They already have, Sira said, eyes still locked on the pool. The moment I touch it fully, they'll come. He stepped beside her. Then we better be ready. Sira nodded. This chamber will protect us long enough. But once I activate it, I won't be able to stop, no matter what happens outside. She took a breath. A deep, stilling breath. Are you scared? Darren asked. She looked up at him. Yes, but I'm more scared of doing nothing. He smiled. Good. You sound human. She blinked, then smiled back. Thank you for being loud. He raised an eyebrow. Loud? Your heart, she said. They said humans are chaos-born, too loud for order. But it's your noise that saved me. Before Darren could answer, the ground above shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The chamber groaned. They're here. Sira whispered. Darren ran to the entrance and saw shapes dropping from the sky, metal-clad figures with glowing weapons. They moved like shadows. They were coming for blood. He looked back at Sira, who had stepped into the pool of light, her eyes glowing with energy. Her hands were raised, and her voice clear, pure, began to echo through the chamber. Not in a language Darren knew, but in one that felt carved into the stars themselves. Pillars lit up. The air vibratd dot outside. The hunters broke through the tunnel. Darren grabbed his old blaster and took a deep breath. "Come on, then," he muttered. "Let's see if you can silence me." He stood alone at the threshold, facing the dark. Behind him, Sira sang to a sleeping world. And far away, across star systems, ancient lights flickered back to life. The first hunter entered the tunnel like a shadow made of iron and lightning. Darren raised his old blaster and fired. The shot cracked through the silence and struck the hunter's chest, but it barely staggered. The armor sparked, absorbed the hit, and the figure kept moving. Darren cursed under his breath and fell back to the edge of the chamber. Behind him, Sira stood in the center of the glowing pool. Her feet didn't even touch the surface anymore. She was floating. Her eyes were wide open, glowing white-blue. Energy pulsed around her like a storm held in silence. He looked back at the tunnel. More hunters poured in. They didn't shout, didn't speak. They just came with blades humming and eyes empty. "Come on," Darren growled, firing again. This time, one fell. Not from the shot, but because the chamber walls themselves responded. A pulse of blue energy cracked down the side and smashed into the creature, sending it flying. The chamber was protecting them. For now, Sira's voice grew. Louder, ringing through the air. It wasn't just sound, it was memory, uncoiling. Visions flickered around her, visible to the naked eye. An ancient throne of glass. Stars rising and falling. Battles long forgotten. And a child, her skin glowing with royal light, hidden away. In a metal pod as her world burned. The hunters hesitated for the first time. They looked at her, really looked. And something in them shuddered. But then the speaker arrived, not walking. Falling. It dropped from the ceiling like a starless god, taller than the others, cloaked in silver-black armor. Its face was a swirling void. And when it spoke, the words weren't heard, they happened inside every cell of the body. "She must not awaken." Darren stumbled back. His mind felt like it was being crushed from the inside. But he forced himself to stay upright. "Why are you so afraid of her?" He shouted, "Because she brings chaos. She carries the seed of rebellion. She is memory, and memory is infection." The speaker raised its hand. Energy gathered in its palm, a sphere of pure darkness. Darren stepped in front of Sira. "Then, you'll have to go through me." The speaker tilted its head, irrelevant, and launched the attack. The dark energy flew like a spear, but it never reached. Darren. A shield burst into life in front of him, made from the lattice itself, pure light. The attack hit and shattered like glass. Darren turned and saw Sira, still floating, but now looking at him. "You are not irrelevant," she said softly. "You are the reason this lattice remembers." Then she raised both hands and the chamber roared. The pillars exploded with light. Energy surged through the walls and into the earth. Symbols rose into the air, spinning. Sira's voice now called. Not just to the room, but beyond, to the void, to the stars, to every hidden node that had been buried long ago, one by one. They answered. Across galaxies, ancient machines blinked awake. Forgotten outposts lit up. Survivors, others like her, felt the pull. The lattice was no longer silent, and the speaker knew. It lunged toward Sira, but Darren didn't let it pass. He threw himself forward, wrapping his arms around the speaker's leg, dragging it down. It struck him across the chest, sent him flying, but it was too late. Sira opened her eyes fully, and the chamber exploded with light. There was no sound, no pain, only memory. The speaker vanished in a flash. As if never born, the hunters froze. One by one, they turned and walked backward into the shadows, disappearing like smoke. And when the light faded, only Sira remained standing. Darren coughed, struggling to sit up. Did we win? He asked. Sira walked to him and knelt. We remembered, she said. And now others are remembering too. He looked around. The chamber was quiet, peaceful, but changed. The walls were no longer black, but alive with stars. They'll come back, won't they? Sira nodded. They always do. Then what now? She looked at him, her voice soft and clear. Then we make sure they never bury the truth again. Weeks passed, but the light that had awakened inside the chamber never truly faded. The outpost above had changed quiet at first, cautious. The fog was gone. The metal skies felt lighter. The hunters never returned. But whispers did. First in broken comes, then through rogue transmissions. Old languages, names long erased, resurfaced in code. Somewhere, across stars and silence, the memory Sira had released was reaching others. Not just her people. Not just royals. Everyone who had ever been silenced. Darren stood at the edge of the outpost now, looking toward the horizon. He was no longer a man haunted by loss. His scars were still there, but they no longer weighed him down. They reminded him of what he stood for. He heard footsteps behind him. Soft light. They found another one, Sira said gently, stepping beside him. Turned. Another like you? She nodded. Her memory was buried in a colony on the far rim. She woke up crying, but she knew my name. Darren smiled. You're becoming a legend. I don't want to be, she said. But maybe it's not about what we want. Her clothes had changed. No longer rags and borrowed sleeves. She wore a robe now woven from recovered royal fibers, shaped by her own light and memory. But her face remained the same. Still the girl who had once hidden beneath a tarp. Still the one who had reached out not with power, but trust. They walked together through the outpost. People nodded now. Some even bowed, but Sira always shook her head. Darren watched her closely. How do you feel? He asked. She paused, like I'm only just beginning. They arrived at the underground lattice again. The entrance, once hidden, was now watched by a small group of volunteers, humans and others. It had become a sanctuary, a place of memory. And healing. Inside, children gathered around the pool of light. Some of them were like Sira, scattered remnants of broken houses. Others were born from different stars but carried the same pain. And when Sira spoke, they listened. What will you do with this place? Darren asked as they watched. I'll protect it, she said. I'll make sure the galaxy never forgets what was done. And who stood up? You think they'll listen? She looked at him. They already are. And she was right. Across the stars, the world was shifting. Empires built on silence were cracking. The speaker who once threatened extinction had vanished, its voice scattered. New leaders, new voices, began to raise, some human, some not. But they all echoed the same truth. A single act of kindness can awaken more than memory. It can awaken change. One day, a messenger arrived from a distant world, bringing an official invitation. A summit of peaceful species, hoping to build something new. Something better. They asked for Sira by name. She turned to Darren. Will you come with me? He hesitated. I'm no royal. Just a man with a stubborn heart. She smiled. That's exactly why I need you. They boarded the ship together, a vessel shaped not for war, but for light and message. As it rose above the outpost, the people below watched silently, their eyes full of hope. And as stars unfolded ahead of them, Sira reached out and touched Darren's hand. I was born a princess, she said softly. But you made me human. He looked at her. No, he replied. You always were. You just needed someone to see it. They flew toward the future, not as ruler and rescuer, not as legend and servant, but as two lives connected by one moment of choice and one unstoppable truth. Sometimes the galaxy doesn't change with armies. Sometimes it changes when a broken man reaches out his hand and refuses to let go.